I welcome you all in our Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav lecture series to celebrate and commemorate 75 years of progressive India. We give respect to collective strength of our people, whether it was the freedom struggle in the past or it is the development of economy in the past, present, and future. I would like to draw attention to the cooperatives which work at the grassroots level, but sets an example of unity and inclusive growth. It gives us the message that development cannot take place in isolation. Rather, sabka saath, sabka vikas, sabka vishwas, and sabka prayas is essential for building Atmanirbhar Bharat of our dreams. In this context, Gujarat's dairy cooperatives, which is spread across thousands of villages in the state, despite village level social differences, has nurtured social harmony and coexistence for common economic goals. This is reflected in terms of ever-expanding turnover of milk collection and sales, helping each and every individual at the grassroots to become the part of development. To shed a light on more than 70 years of journey of dairy cooperatives in Gujarat and the relevancy of social networks, we are happy to have Professor Shyam Singh from Institute of Rural Management, Anand. Professor Singh holds a PhD in political science from the Institute of Social and Economic Change, Bangalore. He was the scholar in residence at the University of Antwerp, Belgium in 2018. He has been engaged in various evaluation and research assignments with UNICEF, the World Bank, NABARD, and state and central governments. Dr. Singh was also an expert committee member constituted by the Ministry of Corporate Affairs for the National CSR Award 2018 and 2019. He was the part of the second National Common Review Mission constituted by the Ministry of Rural Development.
फोटो कैसे हटाएंगे? हमारी आवाज तो जा रही होगी वहाँ.
He is currently an advisor to the Rural Development Department, Government of Jharkhand. His research interests include community development and governance, monitoring and evaluation, CSR, and social networks. He teaches rural society and polity, monitoring and evaluation, and social network analysis at IRMA. Dr. Singh, we are happy to have you in the first lecture of Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav lecture series, organized by Sardar Patel Institute of Economic and Social Research. To chair this program, we have with us Professor Neeti Mehta, Director of Spicer. Professor Mehta has a long years of experience in rural and agricultural economy. She has done many studies of central and state government and also published many books and research papers in renowned journals. We are also happy to have Professor Alakh, a well-known agriculture economist, and has vast knowledge on almost every aspect of Indian economy. He was also the member of Planning Commission and is a professor emeritus at Spicer. Hope that he will also give some in this program. We have other renowned scholars having expertise in their own areas. Now, without wasting time, I hand over all the responsibility of this program to Professor Mehta, chair come moderator come everything. Ma'am, please. And before ma'am start, I request you to please mute yourself. Ma'am, you may start, please.
Thank you, Hansa. The responsibility lies on you and Nachiket for the smooth progress of the event. In any case, welcome to Dr. Singh for conceding to our request and agreeing to deliver a lecture on the role of cooperatives and the enduring role that the cooperatives as village level institutions have played, especially in ushering in rural development, in ushering in organization of primary producers in Gujarat, as well as bringing in a lot of social cohesion and economic development at the grassroots. So I think these are some of the issues where we are expecting that Professor Singh is going to throw a lot of light, and we would really be enlightened by his insights, and since particularly so because his enduring interest of research has been these topics. So I really extend a warm welcome to you. I also welcome Professor Alagh for being with us today morning, and all the distinguished participants that we can see on our screen who have spared some of their time to come and listen to this lecture, very important celebration that are going on in the country in this year. So I think without, we will save our comments and our interjections for after the lecture is over. So I think I would now request Dr. Singh to initiate his lecture. And if you have any slides to share, I think you must have already, we can share them. And, we are looking forward to your lecture.
Thank you, Professor Mehta. Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Hansa Jain, respected Professor Alagh, and the colleagues. Let me first thank you, SPI ESR, for inviting me for this first lecture. I'm really privileged to be here and sharing my insights, whatever I could gather, being in IRMA, very close to the milk capital. It is milk capital, but I'm saying very close to Amul as an institution which we cherish and celebrate the success that it has registered over the last 5 to 6 decades. I'm going to share my slides as the topic is. Can you just confirm if you can see the slides, please?
Yes, it is visible. Yeah.
Okay. And now?
Yeah, we can see.
Okay, good.
Yes.
So one of the, it's important topic. It's a very topic that we have discussed at length. It's not a new topic. We have been talking about for a very long time. But then we have been talking about, in a different perspective. We have talked about the role of Amul, Dairy Cooperative Society, their success in terms of community engagement, in terms of incentives, in terms of their social role to a certain extent. Also, we have highlighted a lot their economic role, particularly when they were able to, or they are able to avoid the intermediaries and trying to transfer all the benefits to farmers directly. What I'm going to do here today, and that's what the topic is, I'm just trying to look at a bit different, taking a bit different dimension and trying to look at from the social networks perspective. How social networks were playing a role in terms of keeping these societies, dairy cooperative societies, relevant for decades. Now, this is less, I would say, researched area. As I said, DCS, dairy cooperative societies, are a successful model of collective action. Perhaps I would like to, stand corrected, but perhaps one of the biggest community action-based collective action post-independence, where we have seen millions of farmers coming together and staying relevant for not less than 7 decades. Probably we do not have that, example in post-independent India. But then it's just what I see and what many other scholars see. It's just not about the incentive and economic benefit. It has to do something with the social status, social structure of those villages. What is it, and why the cooperatives are so relevant even after 7 decades? And what they have done, have they changed the entire social order? Have they changed the social realities and identities? Or they have constructed and maintained a separate system of social identities? So what I'm trying to do here, I'm trying to look at not, as I said, not the economic and business perspective of these societies, but I'm trying to look at what they have done to the local social order, why they have been relevant, so long. I'm using a framework called Relational Sociology Framework, which basically talks about that if there are social changes in the context that we are living in, not necessarily because as an individual who we are and what we do, but also because which network we are part of. I'll give one example. For example, most of the time I behave because whatever I behave or whichever way I behave, because there are certain people in my network behaving in certain direction. So what happens that if I vote for a individual political party, and if I have people who don't like me, more, it's more likely that they will vote for some other party. So what happens that as an individual, our behavior is also a function of the behavior of the people in the network. More often we try and adjust our position in the network. That's what the relational sociology framework is, which says that social realities are relational matter. So I'm going to look at the DCS, its existence, its role within this relational sociology framework. Assumption, I said, is very simple, that whatever we do, whatever the social elements or the actors do, not because what they are, but also because in which network they are part of, and how other members in the network behave the way they behave. Okay, so very briefly, conceptual background, I'm sure everybody knows, because it's the dairy cooperatives in Gujarat. As I said, it's a long, studied, matter, but still we do look at this phenomena within the framework of collective action and social capital. The small group collective action, they work for the economic benefit, but they use different social capital, the forms of social capital, which are basically friendship, status, prestige, trust, autonomy, etc. In fact, they are also able to avoid the problems of a collective action. So what are the basic problems, the dilemmas of collective action? The basic problem is that I would like to work in a collective action as long as I get the benefits, as long as my benefit is higher than the group benefit. So that's a basic problem with the collective action is. But what Ostrom says that, well, sometime because of the social capital that we use, we might be able to achieve better than the rational, the outcomes, which are that sometime I do respect the group good, the public good, rather than my own good, individual good. So I think this is the conceptual background perfectly describe the phenomena of the DCS in Gujarat. What is the assumption that I'm trying to put forward here? And that's a big assumption to make. The assumption is that the cooperatives promote, I'm sorry for the typo here, it's promote. The cooperatives promote social inclusion. That's a big assumption. And why it is a big assumption, particularly in a context like India in general, and Gujarat in particular? Because when I talk about, say, social inclusion, it's nothing but social change, because our existing social order, we all know, because of different identities like caste, gender, they are, to start with, they are exclusionary and not so welcoming for the group from other society, from other caste group. So whenever we say social inclusion, we simply mean that we are talking about the social change. In a way, we are saying that can cooperatives bring social change? That's what the question that we are trying to investigate here. Well, if we say that are they able to bring social change, then basically we are saying if there is a cooperative identity which supersedes social identities, because if they change, it's fine. I mean, then basically the change is the part of the social order. But if they're not able to change, is there a separate identity that cooperatives are trying to promote and and make them relevant against the exclusionary social identities like caste and gender? Now, this is what the big assumption is. And this assumption is not that I'm putting forward. In fact, International Cooperative Alliance has been actually trying to sell the idea of cooperatives across the world using this very fundamental assumption that the cooperatives are actually able to promote social inclusion. So if I take that assumption in the context of Amul, driven led DCS cooperative, Dairy Cooperative Society in Gujarat. Let's see what happens. What we have found here. So again, I'm coming to the basic question: why cooperatives are so stable for the last 75 years that the topic is. I'm trying to look at from two different dimensions, two lenses basically. One, as I talked about, change in social relations. If there is a change in social relations, if the cooperatives are able to facilitate intersocial group interactions and relations, I would look at here two social identities, caste and gender, because that's what is important in Indian context, in Gujarat context as well. So what I will try to see here, I'll just look at the information sharing networks in dairy cooperatives, which I call DCS Info Network. That's one dimension. Two, I'm trying to look at if these dairy means DCS networks are different from other social networks which were there for thousands of years. If they are different. So I'll do the comparison between the DCS Info network and the social information sharing network. When it's a social information sharing means it's a very simple network. You have the friends, you have your extended family members, you keep on sharing your personal information, the business, the losses, the gains, marriage, right? Social function, cultural function. So that's what the non-dairy social information network is. Now, why I'm comparing these two in the number 2 point. I'm sure if you might have come across, there was a sociologist, Mark Granovetter, who promoted the idea of social network in 1973, and there's a seminal article in American Journal of Sociology. The article was on the strength of weaker ties, 1973, and then he wrote another piece in 1983 called Revisiting, the strength of weaker ties. The idea he presents is that if there is a network in a village or in any setting, whether it's urban or rural area, the members of the network would like to utilize that network for several purposes. Why? Because there's a cost to maintain this network. So we cannot be having several networks for several other work. In a very simple way, if I have 2-3 close friends, then what I would do is probably I'll work with them, I'll publish with them, I teach with them, I go and watch movie with them. It is impossible for me to maintain the different network for different activity because there's a cost. I need to spend time with them. I need to maintain those ties, relationship. The simple idea of homophily is that the people they look alike in terms of ideology, maybe in terms of the economic status, in terms of the ideas, whatever it is, they would work on multiple activities together. That is why I'm trying to compare here. If dairy networks are the different ones than the social networks, because as per the Granovetter, both networks should be similar. Why? Because people cannot afford the cost of maintaining different networks. So the second part I'm trying to look at in this lecture is actually to compare whether the two networks, DCS network, Dairy Cooperative Society, in terms of information sharing, and the social network, in terms of information sharing, both are same, similar, both overlap or not. So these are the two aspects that I'm trying to look at in today's talk. Why information sharing I'm trying to look at? Why particular information sharing network relation? Simply because information is a resource. Everybody knows. For example, if I have an information that I can apply for a scholarship abroad, and if I tell 10 of my friends, definitely everybody gets to know, and then everybody would apply. So if as long as I keep this information with me, I'm powerful. Information is a resource. If I have a control, ownership over resource, I'm powerful. I have more opportunity. So in collective action literature, information sharing is taken as a resource. Also, one of the indicators for mutual trust and harmony, which are basically the different facets of social capital. So that is why I'm trying to look at information sharing relation in these two dimensions, which I'm going to talk to. So let me go to first, change in social relations, and I'll come to the comparison after that. Okay, just trying to, I'm sure all of you are familiar with the how the DCS look like, but just to make my point here, I'm trying to sketch a kind of organizational scheme here. So what happens in DCS, there are members and they elect governing body members, GB members. Okay, it happens through election. If they are at the DCS, sometimes they don't do election. If they have a highest amount of social capital, they sometimes nominate, because nobody is there to oppose. Everybody agrees to certain set of people to become the general body member. But usually I've seen, they go for the election, which is a good thing. The members, they pour milk. Then it's just not the only thing that they pour milk. There's a huge support system that is available. And the support system enabled by the DCS itself, definitely by the help of the dairy district union and the federation that we have in Anand. But the system, the support system, is rooted through dairy cooperative society. Now, this support system comes in front of input support, whether it's a vet services, artificial insemination related services, whether it's about delivering mineral mixtures, cattle feed, very importantly, bonus, economic incentive. And I tell you, just last week, I was visiting a couple of DCS in Tara Union, and I was just asking them, okay, last 5 years, what was the portion, what was the percentage of bonus that you give it to members? It was as high as, ranging from 15 to 18%. No banking system in the world give you that much return. In fact, even the people who invest in share bazaar also, they will be a bit skeptical that we don't, at the end of the day, we don't get that much of return. Now, if the farmers are getting 18 rupees out of every 100 rupees return every year, just look at the kind of scale, the kind of, the system that they have established. So there's input support, there's a bonus, and more importantly, which is important for this talk, the social engagement. Now, what is the social engagement that the DCS is engaging with? There is a school function, whether it's a 26th January or whether it's the 15th of August. They give the milk to the school to be distributed among the kids. Sometimes they, make lassi out of it, or sometimes, they make kheer out of it, whatever it is. They give sometime, some, not all the DCS, but few DCS also, the richer ones, particularly those who have good funds, economic strength with them, sometimes they give scholarships. Sometimes they give people's advance payment help when they are in need. And believe me, it is, I think, one of the significant help, because if those people don't get the help, they get into the trap of informal credit market in the villages, which is quite horrible in terms of the interest rate, in terms of what happens once they have taken those credits which are informal. So if the DCS gives some payments in advance, they deduct it from the payments that they later make it to the member. But that's a great relief to that member. So this is what the DCS is. More than what they collect the milk, more than what Kurian thought about, that we will be able to avoid individual patronage and power and discrimination and intermediaries. It actually has gone a step further. Not only they are able to avoid the intermediaries, but they are also able to provide a strong support system which the members need. Now, I just recall here, if so, I'm sure some of you might have gone through this. There's a book by Barrington Moore, Origin of Social Democracy, where he has compared 6-7 bigger countries, how democracy originated, how was the birth of democracy, took place. And he compared India and China in that book. It's a very seminal, very famous book. He says that if India was not able to go through the revolution which China went in I think 49 around, reason was that there was a strong support system in Indian social system, in the Indian society. While the condition for the revolution was more severe in India, not in China, but revolution happened in China. The reason is, if somebody is dying hungry in the villages, people don't let him or her die hungry, they'll give him the food. if somebody is poor and want to get his daughter married, people will come together, will give him rice, will give him wheat, will give him, so that he is able to, get his daughter married. While they won't pull that person out of poverty because they don't have that much economic strength, but they won't let them die, which basically means that there is a strong support system. What these DCS have done, they have capitalized on those support systems in order to establish a strong network of members. And that is why Barrington Moore says it was really surprising why China went through revolution, why not India? The answer was China never had a strong support system, the kind of support system India had. And I'm able to connect those dots here, that how DCS actually, they pitched in and actually tried to, fill those loopholes and strengthen the support system in those villages. Now, let me come to the information sharing, on DCS matter. As I said, I'm looking at the caste and gender identities on DCS information sharing. This is the network. I collected data from 2 DCS. Now I'm trying to make it panel. So I had collected in 2018. That was one of my project when I went Belgium on a visiting assignment. Now, currently, when I'm actually speaking, there's a data being collected again on the similar DCS. Just want to see in 4 years, 5 years time, how network changes. The different color means different caste. There are 4 or 5 castes, basically Parmar, Solanki, and then, these are the caste here. Just see here. These are the different caste group. Of course, the pink one is the biggest one. They're the Parmars. Then you have the others I have clubbed together, and you have this Solanki here. Now, what this says that in the network of information sharing in terms of caste, they are actually talking to each other within the caste. Of course, they have some ties, some relationship with other caste group. It's not that they are completely in silos. But if you look at the density, where they actually are, talking to, whom they are talking to more often, is within the caste group. But then what is surprising here? This is not surprising. We know the caste system in India, so this is not surprising, right? When it comes to the social norm, social order, well, these are the groups which come together and behave the way they want to behave, or the way their social order and norms allow them to behave. So this is not a surprising picture. It is pretty much there. What is surprising is just look at few, between 2 groups, maybe one is Solanki or maybe one is, another group, you have someone from other caste actually mediating the information sharing. We call them broker in a positive sense, not in a negative sense. So it's a brokerage. Now, brokerage can be used for anything. It can be used negatively. So the person will extract rent. That's a negative. Intermediaries, again, what Dr. Kurian wanted to avoid, wanted to eliminate. And there's a positive sense that the person will facilitate the relationship between 2 different caste groups. So these are few, people of different caste group connecting to the different groups, okay, while there is information sharing going on in DCS. Now, this is something which we need to go into some detail. And when I'm collecting the panel data, actually, I'm trying to look at, and maybe after a few months, I'll be in position to really reflect on this, how these brokers, again, in a positive sense, or intermediaries are able to facilitate information sharing between different caste groups. Because that there are silos of different caste groups, it is understood. But then there is someone from completely 3rd caste group mediating the information sharing between 2 caste groups, the information sharing on DCS. This is very important, observation that we came through out of this data. Let me look at so earlier was DCS matter, and let me look at now the personal dairy matters. There's 2 different network. Personal dairy matters means I'm talking to my fellow colleagues or the villagers in terms of the health of the animal, unko khana kaise dena hai, what kind of feed, etc. DCS matters means we are talking about the DCS, bonus, support system, mineral mixtures, etc. So these are 2 different networks. On personal dairy matters, again, we have look at the caste groups in working in silos, right? But then we have, fewer, basically fewer, the intermediaries, those who might have a higher brokerage power, facilitating the interaction between the completely different caste group. So this is what, when we look at the caste network, is what we get. Let me go to the gender network. So here the yellow ones are the women and the green ones are the men members. And as I said, but it is quite expected also that the women would more often talk to women. Not that they won't talk to men at all, they are talking, but mostly they will come in, the density of their interaction will be observed within the women group. That's what it is. So you see that the green ones are the men and the yellow ones are the women. They mostly are engaging within their group. Okay, definitely they have some interaction with the males. And these people are the DCS members. These boxes are the DCS members. These are different DCS members in the village who are talking to each other in terms of information sharing on DCS. When I go to the personal dairy matters, look here, the same thing. You have women mostly again talking to each other. So the density of their information sharing is very high within their group than between men, women and men. So this is what it is. What does it say? Okay, before I come to conclude, I think I have, in terms of, I was just visualizing the data. Now I'm giving you some estimation. So what I've tried here, I have calculated the number of ties. Ties means I am talking to someone, that becomes a tie relation. And the density. Density means if the most possible, suppose if there's 100 relation that can happen between people, how many of them are really exist? That's called density. So density means the actual ones divided by the possible number of relations. So if there are 3 people, there could be 3 relations, right? Talking to each other, but only 2 might be talking. So there's only 1 relation. So density would be 1 by 3. So what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to first just look at the number of ties, total number of ties, and then the density. So Thakur talking to Thakur, highest number of ties and 6% density. Then Thakur talking to Solanki, Parmar and others. Solanki talking to Solanki, the most number of ties and density is 10%. Parmars talking to Parmars, again the higher number of ties, density is 18%. And so goes with the other smaller castes that were there, which we clubbed together. Now, if you go to the gender wise, male talking to male, 112 ties is very significant. When I say 112 ties, means there are 112 relations between the male members of information sharing. Density is 3.2%. Density is lower because the bigger the tie is, bigger the network is, density are going to be lower. For example, if I'm the part of an online network where there are 1,000 members, there's no way I can maintain 1,000 ties with everybody. I can only maintain 4, 5, 6. So higher the network is, density comes lower, but it does not mean if it's lower then it is insignificant. Actually, it's a very significant density. Male talking to female with 3% density, equivalent to as they talk among each other, is a 15 ties. But when female talk to male is only 9 ties. These, I'm ignoring 112. But what I'm trying to tell you here, just compare 15 and 9. Male are talking more often to women than the women are talking more often to men. Let me talk about the same thing in personal dairy information network. You find similar pattern, right? The density is highest, the number of ties, highest within the caste group. Same here. Look at male. Okay. Bit difference here. Female are talking more to male when the personal dairy network is. rather than the DCS. And this explains because most of the maintenance of the, or rather, maintaining the dairy activities within the household is done by women, whether giving, food or cattle feed or, milking animals, etc. And therefore, while it comes to interpersonal dairy matters within the household, or maybe the neighbor, is a women who actually more often talk to male, which is a very encouraging sign. And there are studies who actually prove that there are signs of women empowerment because of the dairy, relations. One of such paper, we were also part of. But there's a large literature, base of literature, which talks about women empowerment through dairying. So the second picture of female talking more to men actually makes some sense. Okay, so what? Okay. Can you mute, please?
Dr. Singh, please unmute yourself. You're also muted in giving the command. Please unmute yourself.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's okay now.
You can hear me now?
Yeah,
okay.
I can hear you.
So let me now conclude what we are seeing here. We are seeing here that the social identities are intact. Dairies are not altering or influencing the social identities, particularly caste. But there are some encouraging signs for the gender when it comes to women talking to men for personal dairy matters. DCS is still men are more often talking to women than the other way. And I think for that, one has to really understand that who goes and pour milk to DCS. One has to go and actually stay for twice a day, evening and the morning, and look at the trend, who comes there, who talk to whom. But then at least what the social network studies tells us is that there are some encouraging signs of loosening of the gender role. However, the size and density of the male-female interaction, the intergender kind of interaction is very small, because there are only fewer ties, not big, compared to the male-to-male. And as I said, there are evidence based now available which talks about the women empowerment through dating. So if there is some loosening up that is happening, female and male interaction, I think it's simply because the women maintain the dairy related activities within the household and in surrounding. This is what about the inter-social group relations. So caste, we don't see anything is changes, except there are few intermediaries which we need to look into. And in gender, there's some encouraging sign where female are more often trying to share information with male with respect to personal dairy matter. Now, let me briefly go to the next the second component, comparing DCS and non-dairy social networks. So I'm now bringing the Granoveters, trying to really test what Granoveters says, whether the Granoveters says is correct or if we are getting something else. Okay, so here, these are again the network. Now the color is based on the red color for the governing body members and yellow for the general members. These are not based on gender. Now these are based on the role. So yellow ones are the member and the red ones are the governing body member. The size of the node, the circle, is based on their degree, means if they have more number of contacts. So the bigger the size is, the person has more number of contacts in terms of information sharing. So these are two graphs: dairy information network and social information network. See, look at what important here is. If you look at the social information network, there are two isolates. And I'm sure if, we all know the village life, you might find always one or two people in the village who are completely isolated. They have no whatsoever relation with others. They say, okay, you do whatever you want, I'll do whatever I want. Now, when I say these isolates, particularly M48 and M22, these are the member IDs. These are two members. In terms of social information sharing, they are the isolates, not that they are completely isolated in the village. while these two members are completely intact and they are part of the dairy information network, which is quite surprising. If I don't want to part of the information network, in the village for the bigger matter, for the larger context, why should I be part of for the dairy information network, for the DCS information network? This at least give a hint that dairy is able to unite people, okay, whether intentionally or otherwise, in terms of, because people do need information with respect to DCS. People do need information with respect to bonus. People do need information with respect to the support system, with respect to the culture, mineral mixture, with cattle feed, everything. Now, this is one sign of inclusiveness of dairy cooperative society. Let me just go ahead and see what happens after this. Please do not go with these. These are, I think, the conceptual categories, like average degree. Degree means the number of ties that I have. Centralization means how centralized the group is. Means number of ties are limited within a small group. Network will be bigger, but I have 5 friends, and 5 friends talk to all of them, 5. So they are centralized. They might not be talking to others in the paper. So that's called centralization. Density is, again, as I said, that if there could be 100 ties, if how many actual ties are there. And reciprocity, the last one, most important. Reciprocity means if I share information with someone, whether that person also shares with me or not. Reciprocity is an indicator of trust and stability. So DIN, Dairy Information Network, and the 4th column is SIN, Social Information Network. Just look at the measure here. If you look at the DIN, it's more inclusive because there's no isolates there. At least in social SIN, you have 2 isolates. It's decentralized, or rather less centralized compared to SIN, where only the centralization is 1.4%. Please do not get into the number, because just look at the relative meaning, because these numbers will have to then look at what centralization is and how these numbers actually play. But I'm just trying to put the relative scenario between both the networks. And if you look at the reciprocity, 48% ties are reciprocal, which means out of 148 relations, people do share each other. It's a very important indicator for stability. Higher the reciprocity is, the stable a network going to be for a longer period. I think that's also explained why DCS were there intact for about, say, 75 years or 70 years. I mean, I think the first DCS was established, if I'm correct, sometime 1946-47, and then you have other DCS coming in, another structure which Dr. Kurian tried putting in place. After so many decades, I think one of the reasons is the stable net for the network is also higher reciprocity. So what it says, the DIN is more inclusive, less centralized, or rather decentralized, and stable.
Meeting information, you are using view button.
SIN is, if you look at SIN, is bigger. It has to be bigger because it's, other than dairy, everything is, I'm trying to put in under social networks, but it's not that big, right? So if you look at the number of ties, only 279 compared to 242 for DIN. If you look at the average degree is the average number of relations per member. It's 3.2 compared to 2.8. I mean, if anybody take the average of both, it might come to 3. So that's not much difference here. And the reciprocity is also definite, it's less, lesser than the. So what is SIN is bigger, denser, okay, and centralized. So difference is not of much significance as of now, because volume, it's a bit different. Of course, they are different in the volume because the size is a bit different. But then it definitely tells that both are not overlapping. Both don't represent the similar characteristics of network. They are different. So this is a first blow to what Granovetter said, that the network, if you have a network, it will participate in different activity rather than creating different network. So here we see that there's some contradicting facts coming out what Granovetter tried proving. What I did next, just to look at their degree centrality. Now, degree centrality means how many number of ties that I have in terms of information sharing. For second column is DIN, then I have ranked them. Then fourth column is SIN, and I have again ranked them. The first column is member ID. I'm not telling the member's name. It is not good to tell the names of the member. So just look at here, number in DIN, in the rank number 1, someone M63, that's his ID, has 10 relations of information sharing. Okay, is a number 1 rank, number 2, number 3. So if you see the bold ones in blue color, I'm not sure if you are able to see. I can see in my computer. So the third column of rank, number 1 is M63, 10 ties, 10 relations. Number 2 is S, which is secretary of the that's a code S. 8. Number 3, someone M12, 7 ties. Now this is DIN, Dairy Information or DCS Information Network. Go to the fourth column, Social Information Network. Look at the rank. What is important here is top 5 in each network are more or less different, which is a very significant finding. Means someone who's influential in the social network is not influential in the dairy network, and vice versa. Okay, so top 5 are more or less, I'm saying, because number 3 and number 4, I think few members overlap, but number 1, number 2, 3, they, and some of the members, because there's few members have equal number of ties, so they are given the equal rank. But in general, the top 5, they are different in both the networks. Only 4 actors, if you look at, they actually are influential in both the networks. They may have a different rank, but they some rank they got: secretary, M60, M66, and M75. So they're influential in both the networks. What I tried looking at, I just looked at the membership age of these members. Who are these people? Not their age, the membership age. For how long they were the member of the DCS. Just look at here. M60 and M66, their membership age was ranging from 20 to 25 years. So they were member of the DCS from the 20 to 25 years. And M74 is just 4-year-old in terms of the membership. Okay. What does it say? It actually hints at very smooth generational change in terms of the soft leadership, not the hard one, not that you have to become a leader, but the soft leadership change in terms of information sharing, from seniors to junior. I mean, 7 decades, you can understand how many generations would have come into picture in the DCS. It's a 75 years time. So this smooth change. So if you look at the influential people, not only the older ones are there, the senior ones, there are newer ones also trying to take part in the information sharing, which is very crucial for the DCS. And both the network have independent space. Means if the top 5 are different, which means those top 5 soft or whatever the leaders, they may not be elected, but they are different in both the networks, which means they are maintaining independent space in the community. Last part, GP means governing body. So if you look at the first column, ID, wherever ID is GP means they are the governing body member. So second member is GP1. Then you have in between below M40 GB8. These are the 2 governing body member appearing in the ranking. But if you look at GB1, it has 4th rank in SIN, but nothing in DIN. Nothing in DIN, right? If you look at GB8, influential, very influential, 1st rank in SIN, but nothing in DIN. It defeats the common sense. If they are the dairy leaders, they should have been leading the information sharing in dairy, while they are leading the information sharing in social networks. Now this, I'm trying to draw some conclusion. Definitely we have to do work more in order to really get, but at least it shows that there's no lead capture when it comes to dairy network, because the dairy leaders are allowing others to really participate, and information is not being controlled or held. This is very important. As I said earlier, if I control information, I'm more powerful. because people don't know what is happening. So if dairy leaders, the members of the governing body are not controlling the information, and the other people, the members are controlling, which is indicating there's no elite capture. I just tried looking at, the comparing, because members were same, and then I asked, find out they're both two networks with the similar members. If the match that their, degree matches is completely different from social and information. What I did next, I tried understanding there's two concepts in social networks, something called betweenness. The brokerage I was talking when I was talking about the caste network. There are people in between, intermediary role. That's called betweenness. And closeness means how close I am with the entire network. So these are the measures, we calculate. For example, if I am part of the group, maybe I'm more acceptable and I can reach out to everybody in a very short period of time. So that's called closeness. So betweenness means how often I'm found between two people. So if they want to exchange information, it has to go through me. So that's called betweenness, brokerage. So this is DIN, Dairy Information Network. It's a very, systematic. So there are 4 quarters, Q1, Q2, Q3. Q1 is basically a higher closeness and higher betweenness, that is how I tried looking at. So just look at, they are very systematic appearing in this. And if you look at the Q1, which is higher closeness and higher betweenness, M1, M2, M3, right? They are completely again different from the rank that I showed you earlier of information sharing, because I might have more ties, more degree, more number of people I'm interacting with, but I may not be more closer to everybody. So when I look at more closer to everybody closeness, and me being found on the path of different people, you have different set of people here. Okay, so again we get the evidence of generational change. If you look at M1, M2, M3, M1 2 years old only, M2 15 years, and M3 5 years. So 2, 5, 15. These are the members who have highest betweenness and closeness centrality in the network. Now, if I do it for the social information network, well, it's very scattered. That is how society would look like, right? It cannot be in a fashion like this, very kind of a systematic manner. It's quite haphazard. But then, if you see again, sorry, here the Q1, M12, S, and M66, the different people. As I said in the first, the table, the top ones in the SIN are different from the top ones in the DIN. So actually, this triangulate what I was trying to say earlier. Last thing I did, and then I'll conclude after that. The last thing I did was trying to look at the connection. So if I'm the member, for dairy, I have these connections, 3 people. For social, do I go to 3 people or do I have different people? As per Granometer, I should have gone to 3 people. Again, those who were the dairy connection. For social also. When I did that, out of 85 nodes that I have, the members that I interview, 51 has a completely different network. So 51, there's no common member when it comes to dairy and social network. 34 had few common, right? So one common node was found in 25 connections, and 2 common nodes were found in 9 connections. Something like this. I just copied few. So M25 ka dairy network is this. M25 is connected with M60, M28, and M30. Look at the social network, M25, M28, M67, M66, M8, no common member. These are the networks of M25. So you find that you will have different network. So basically what I tried writing earlier, that there are dairy friends who are other than the social friends. The dairy friends are different from the social friends. It is very clearly, at least for this DCS, I know that the data coming from a couple of DCS, I cannot generalize because there are, so many DCS in Gujarat. I probably need data from some more DCs to generalize, but for sure these DCs, which were the data that I collected, they were 65 years old DCs. They were quite old. You have different dairy friends and different social friends. So what is the final observation that I'm trying to put forward here? Freeman was one of the greatest scholar in the area of social networks. He talks about closeness and betweenness. Betweenness as a measure of control. As I said, if I'm in between of two people, I can actually exploit them. I can facilitate. I can do anything. I can show my negative behavior. I can show the positive behavior. So it's a measure of control. Closeness is all about my efficiency. If I am able to reach out to everybody very quickly, it's about the efficiency. If these are the measure of control, independence, and efficiency, which means both the networks have different centrality measures, different mechanism, means measure of controls are different, measure of efficiency and independence are different, which basically means that both networks are different. They are not overlapping. They are not similar network. Both networks are different. Yes, there are people in between. We can call them gatekeepers. We can call them the facilitator. In social network, gatekeepers could be the results of the kinship, the class and class relation. But in DIN, mostly they are the facilitator because they are not leader. If they are not leader, they don't have leading responsibility. Then what they are doing is they are trying to facilitate from older member to new member. So they are said to be facilitator here. High reciprocity support this argument. So dairy leaders behave as a common community leader because they are not leaders in the dairy information sharing network. This is what observation that we get from the second dimension that I wanted to look at. So to conclude, social identities are intact. We saw in terms of gender and caste, and cooperative identity does not supersede the social identities. They don't replace, they don't alter. But then what can happen? Again, both the networks are different. But then, more importantly, if its cooperative identity does not replace or supersede the social identity, does it maintain its own identity? At least the data coming from these DCs indicate toward this conclusion that while it does not touch the social identities or whatever it is, they are happening as per gender and caste role, but it is trying to maintain its separate identity. And that is why people who are excluded in social network, they are included in the dairy network. It has established a social and cultural role, and for the reason I already discussed. Now, one of the reasons is why it is maintaining a separate identity. The readily available explanation is that if the dairy DCS uses the same network, then you are not only borrowing the network, you also are borrowing the problems and complexity and conflict of the network. There are caste-related problems, there are inter-caste conflict, right? They are intergender conflict. So if you borrow the same network, you also borrow the conflict which are bad for economic benefit. I mean, if I want to really be very good in the market, I want to have a very good clientele base, everybody will suggest you, please maintain good behavior with your clients. Otherwise, what would happen? Well, your market will get affected. So what these DCs have done is they are able to successfully ignore, and not completely, it's not a 0-1, it's not a binary relation here, but largely keep those social identities away from the cooperative identities. Why? Because if you keep those identities away, you won't have those conflicts and complex problems emerging in the DCS network, so that the DCS will continue with effectiveness. This is what I had to say, and that is how social networks are really important if we want to understand why DCS were relevant for so long and they are still relevant. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Singh. I think it was an absolutely intriguing presentation, and the methodology that you have used and the kind of analysis that you have done has left us with so many takeaways, and I'm sure everybody is brimming with questions, and they must be having a lot of queries. And I think for me, the most important takeaway of this entire analysis was the encouraging role that the dairy cooperatives have placed for women's empowerment, for enabling them to interact with amongst their peer groups as well as the males of the different castes. Although the caste mingling doesn't really come out that it has happened, or the cooperatives have really initiated that. But I think, your network designs have very clearly shown how uniting the dairy cooperatives have been over the decades, and the kind of role that they are playing. And also something which really was very encouraging was that there is no elite capture. So that has come out so clearly from your presentation. So I think I have certain other questions, and I would also like certain other your comments on certain other issues. But now I will leave the house open, and I would encourage the participants to also raise their hands, or unmute themselves and pose a few questions. Yeah. So yeah, we have Dr. Reddy here who would like to pose a question. So you can go ahead, sir. Mr. Gopinath Reddy, you can raise your question.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, good morning. Good morning to all. And it's very nice to listen to Dr. Singh. Excellent presentation. And you looked at really from different lens, the Amul experience. And for some of us who are away, who are not from Gujarat, it's really fascinating work that you have done. But I just wondering, besides all this, and it's also very difficult to, understand your rather very dense analysis in very quick time, particularly someone who's not very familiar with the sociological concepts of all these things. But you have done a good job. Congratulations for that. But my only query is that since you are a political science background, that's what the chairman has said in the beginning. I'm just wondering, Gujarat is not India, okay? So you have a different state setups, and of course, Gujarat has done exceptionally well in cooperatives, which is not the case with other parts of the country. So at least if I talk about my state, although I'm in Hyderabad, but I belong to Andhra Pradesh. So if I take my state, cooperatives are not very successful. For that matter, not only in Andhra Pradesh, in different parts of the country, they are not very successful, essentially because of the overriding political considerations. Cooperative movement, as a student of political science, has been, affected terribly by the political, considerations in number of states. How come? I just wanted a general question. How come the Gujarat cooperatives could insulate itself from the political, what is called maneuverability? And Gujarat is a state where you have a serious political contestations. Okay, so how do these cooperatives insulate itself and become a model in terms of the success? So do you say that there is a chance for that? See, Andhra Pradesh government very recently had entered into memorandum of understanding with the Amul cooperatives, and the initial reports say there are some serious problems. Of course, they are teething problems. I'm not saying they are a serious problem, but I'm very sure that the political issues come in the way. The principal opposition party is already opposing this Amul business with state government. So can you just explain, throw light how that Gujarat model, you can explain in terms of the political angle? Of course, you have done excellent social analysis, social network analysis. Please also tell that how did they overcome these political barriers in its success? Thank you. Thank you, ma'am.
Should I respond for each question,
Yeah.
Prashapita?
Okay. Yes, I think you can respond.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
before
So,
other people prepare their questions and their ideas.
So thank you, sir. I think this is I think the question that more often asked, because Amul has not been so successful in other states. Well, it is doing reasonably well in multiple others other than Gujarat in terms of its business, in terms of in terms of keeping people together, and particularly, for example, Kerala, Melma is quite successful. It has been doing quite good. Some of the dairy unions in district dairy unions in Karnataka, and Punjab has been responding very well. So some states are trying to do very well, but definitely they cannot they cannot reach to the height that Amul, the cooperatives in Gujarat has gone. Now the basic difference, if you ask me as someone who have tried understanding the DCS, the phenomena from a network perspective, is dairy cooperatives in Gujarat to me was a social experiment, and when it is going to be replicated in other states is mostly about the administrative mechanism and administrative initiative. There's a difference between a social experiment which was done very carefully, keeping political forces at bay. I mean, if you hear Dr. Kurian's speech, or rather you read his work, you'll find that it was a conscious effort in initial years to not to really get involved with any kinds of political ideology and any kinds of that has impact on the social fabric in the social experiment that they were doing at the village level. And one of the important factor for this behind the success of these cooperative is that they involve basically the community leaders, not panchayat leader. They're different. The community leaders, they actually prepare the army of community leaders in the villages who got involved with the whole movement. And it was, as I said, it was not an administrative effort. It was a social movement. It was a social experiment. For example, more often when we talk about Dr. Kurian, we also talk about, say, Tribhuvandas Patel, because he was the one actually who laid down the whole, the ground ready for this experiment. If we talk about, say in a different example, Green Revolution, we talk about, MS Swaminathan. Nobody can forget what C. Subramaniam as a agriculture minister did. So you always have few people who will, prepare that ground and try and make sure that some of these conflicting forces are not part of the experiment that they want to do. Now, other state, what is happening, and that's my reading, is mostly the top-down approach. So, the governments want to replicate Amul, which is not a bad intent. It has to be done. But then whether there is a demand from the local to really go for these kinds of experiments where they want to channelize their efforts, because if there's no demand from the local, then it remains as a political problem. It never becomes a public problem. In political science literature, sir, public problem and political problems are often misunderstood as the same problem. But what happens, the public problem is the problem which basically people put forward, and it attracts the attention of the political leadership, and they capture it, either for the good or for bad, for the both or for really helping people. So that this public problem more often is posed somewhere elsewhere as a political problem. So I think the fundamental difference is that while Gujarat was a social experiment, another state is still administrative effort.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I would encourage my Spicer colleagues to open up and.
I want to ask a question.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay. As urbanization is spreading very fast, and it has an influence on the rural people also, and also the behavior of the social relations. In such a situation, how do you look at the future of these cooperatives? My first question. Second question is that to what extent digital technology has contributed to the growth of dairy cooperatives? This is my second question.
I think if you talk about the future, particularly the influence of urban culture and the new changes that we witness, as long as the fundamentals of this social experiment don't change, and which are the common efforts, the community efforts, and of course DCS ability to generate incentive. If these two do not change, I don't see that even if you have the cultural influence coming from outside, or whether interaction or transformation between rural and urban, I am convinced that the DCS will keep on functioning the way they are functioning now. Probably something will happen only when the reciprocity goes down. That's number one. And number two is if the DCS loses its ability to produce economic incentive, which is very important because, if you look at the agrarian distress post-Green Revolution, what happened, dairy in Gujarat was one of the best economic support system. And if it remains that way, I think it will go as it is moving forward. The second question was about, Hansaji, sorry, I just missed second. Can you just repeat second one?
Urbanization, I think. Huh?
So there was a bit different. The second question.
Digital connectivity and their role.
First
Oh,
one
yes.
is urbanization and second is digital connectivity.
Role of yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so good that you asked this question. So basically, when I'm going to collect the panel data, which is happening now, even today is also data collection is happening. We are also trying to look at the role of digital technology in DCS functioning and how members are able to interact through the digital. So I have very initial input. I'm sure once the data arrive and then we are able to conclude our interviews, we'll be able to tell you in a more concrete way. But yes, they actually are using the digital technology to enable the trust. Now, why I'm saying trust? Earlier, the measurement of FAT and SNF, because that's the basis for computing the rate or rather, the quality of the milk, and on that basis, they are giving the money, the farmers. Now they have computers. Now they have the digital technology. They can compute the fat content and SNF. The farmers get SMS, believe me, every day. When they are paid, they get SMS. The DCS have gone in and established micro ATMs to disburse the payment, because otherwise the villages might have to go to several kilometers. And believe me, for people like us, urban residents, we go to DMart once in a month and buy everything. We go to an ATM and draw maybe some 10,000 for the whole month. But people there do not have these, either the expenditure habit or, these kind of, ability to go and travel 5 kilometers, 10 kilometers every day and get the money back from their banks. So they have established micro ATMs. So basically they can withdraw money in their village itself whenever they like. So definitely they have integrated the technology in their functioning, and which we found at least also enabling the trust when it comes to the measuring fat and SNF content. But how far it has gone, I think I'll be able to tell after a few months.
Yeah, I think
Thank
digital technology has really encouraged trust and the faith that we would have on these kind of organizations at the village level. I hear that I can see Professor Alag has unmuted himself. Sir, we would like to have your expert comments on this issue. Anybody else would like to pose a question?
Hello.
Yes, please. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you, sir, for the useful lecture. So my question is like, how the cooperatives and the technology is useful to the women farmers?
Again, I mean, as I said that I still have not really got much insight in terms of, and the current study actually is looking into the use of technology. When I say use of technology, we are looking at the phones, smartphones, the app, the system through which, they are interacting, WhatsApp. For example, I'll tell you, and one of the project that we did with, NDDB, and we were collecting data in Kerala. Believe me, the farmers in Kerala, they are actually receiving the ration advice in terms of the cattle feed through the apps available on internet. They take advice from the system that NDDB has established. They have the local resource person who actually advises them to what kind of ration they should give. And then these are the people who actually triangulate that advice with the scientific advice available on different, authentic sources. And then they give ration and cattle feed. And women are quite often involved in these activities. So on surface, I can tell you that actually there's a great interface that technology has established. professionalization. But to what extent and what is leading to, probably I will not be able to say right now. As I said, maybe after a couple of months, I'll be able to tell something, because currently we are actually studying this phenomena. But yes, it does, making available some of these platforms for women farm. Basically, when we say dairy farmers, these are women farmers, because dairy is being managed by women only at the home. So they have a greater stake in terms of what cattle feed they should be giving, what ration they should be giving. So in some state, we have seen that yes, women are largely interacting with the technology and getting the benefits. But in Gujarat, I think we have to still wait for some time, and then let's see how study indicates. So I can only say that much, Monica.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, so I think just taking off from where you left, and also supplementing the initial query that was raised, I would also like to know your comments on why. I mean, of course, cooperatives, if for an outsider and a non-Gujarat person would say that cooperatives have been very successful in Gujarat, but even within Gujarat, we know that they have not been successful in Saurashtra, for instance, and so many other pockets. And when you mention about the gender and the role and all, I mean, does patriarchy, you being a political scientist and with a lot of reading on sociology, does the patriarchy and the kind of social structure that is there in the Saurashtra region is a major factor in for the dairy cooperatives to be not so successful, because the role of women probably is a little subdued and sort of suppressed? Is that the reason? Because even within Gujarat, we can see that not everywhere cooperatives have been successfully replicated.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with you, Professor Mehta, and that's very correct. So you, even within Gujarat, you will have the differences in terms of in Charator region, you have a very successful cooperatives, but you go to the Saurashtra and other, you will still have relatively not so successful, though they have been relevant, have been functioning for a long period of time. And I think the answer lies, you are very correct, patriarchy is one, definitely, because it does. So this is, one study I did, another study, this book just came out where we're trying to look at the social norms and gender role in Gujarat and West Bengal. Believe me, when we're looking at the social norms and gender role in Gujarat, other than the dating, the patriarchy actually is pretty much visible. The relations are pretty much there, where actually they obstruct or rather hamper the women's ability or access towards economic decision making. So it is there. Now, why it is less successful in Saurashtra and the more successful in the region in Kheda and Charator is, I think we have to look at the indicators of social capital.
True. I think you're very right.
And engagement. So as I said, it's really encouraging to see that the female to male interaction is in personal dairy matters is kind of giving a very good signal. Where it's difficult to conclude that is a women empowerment. I think it has to go a long way, but at least there are signals where we can see that in this region, the dairy is one of the factor. If not, if you cannot attribute that result, maybe we can at least say that it is a contribution that leading towards the changes in gender role. But that is because so 2014-15, we did a national study for National Dairy Development Board, NDDB, on women empowerment. So not only Saurashtra, other parts also of the Gujarat and other states, they have very different scenario when it comes to dairying and the women role. And if you try and understand why, they have a different, roles or different extent of the autonomy and the leadership. Again, I would say answer lies in the indicators of networks. Where is the reciprocity? Where is the trust? Where is the autonomy? Are social norms relaxed for women in those cases or not? So yes, in a way, patriarchy does matter. It still matters. Even in Kheda, it still matters. But there are some evidence where actually we are enabling women to take some decision and actually interact with not only the family member and the extended family member, but also the male members from other caste group, which is very encouraging. Not sure if that much of social capital exists in other parts of the Gujarat. I think that's a major reason why you see the differences.
Yeah, I think your insights are really very, very, I mean, they're throwing some new kind of, like, in a very age-old, topic of study, cooperatives and all, but the way that you have been looking at these relations and coming out with how actually they matter, because ultimately the economic good that the cooperatives offer is what is making even the superstition of the caste networks, and the productivity and the outcomes of economic outcomes are leading the success of the dairy cooperatives, and that is why they are fostering so much of interlinkages and networks and all. Just one, I mean, if nobody else has any question, I would like to also supplement my this question is that what is the way that you have gone about this? I mean, this is a very intriguing, and I think this network analysis is emerging to be a very important way and a tool of social and economic analysis. So can you also throw some light on how the methodology that you have adopted and how you have gone about doing this study? I think for researchers in our institute, that would also be very sort of illuminating for us.
Okay, thank you. I think if time permits, I can come there, and actually I can have a kind of interaction with all of you on methodology. But very quickly, it's a methodology which is quite old, but quite new in Indian context. Not many of us were actually using it earlier. So what happens that, as I said, the background is in the relational sociology framework, where we think that not everybody happens because of the individuality, but also it happens because of the relation we establish with others. So what we did was first of all, definitely we have to define the network boundary. We have to have a network, otherwise there won't be any network analysis. Now, sometimes the boundaries are defined by the network itself, just like a DCS. They already have the boundary, which means the membership. All the members are the part of the DCS network. So it is like a bana banaya network for us. So we don't have to really, but then within that, you have to be really very careful. If you take the data from all the members, some members are active, some are not. So active means those are pouring milk for last 6 months or 1 year. If they are not pouring milk, they will not be too much interested in the DCS related or personal dairy information networks. So what we did, we redefined the boundary and actually collected data from active members. So it becomes a new network within the large DCS network. So then we have a network survey that we implement. There's a protocol and supported by very intense in-depth interviews, because networks will tell you who is talking to whom and what, but why they are talking, why they are not talking. You have to have a set of in-depth interviews. Then there are different concepts, analytical concepts like density, diameter, centrality measures, which actually talks or rather reflect a specific type of characteristics of social relations. So we need to know those, the conceptual categories, and then what kind of inferences that we can draw from them. So that, because if we don't understand the network well, network analysis will not serve any purpose. So I think one of the basic requirement for the network analysis is that we need to understand the network first very well. Then only all these categories will make sense. Otherwise, they'll be just numbers and or arrows and will not be able to make any sense of it. So the basic is that we have to have a good hand in terms of the conceptual detail and the contextual, the ecosystem. Then there is a specific protocol for this methodology, specific protocol for survey. We collect the survey, and then if network is bigger, you have to have some software. Is it smaller, we can do this manually, all the calculation. But it's bigger, then there are softwares available. I do use one software, but there are multiple softwares available which can, like in Europe, I have seen people handle 1 lakh data points in. So 1 lakh. So like Twitter networks and Facebook networks, there are millions of people, right? They write the papers and they have softwares. But here we are dealing with 85 people only. So here also I use the software, but we have to have a software to do that. We can do that manually for 10, 15 people, but not more than that. So these are a few things that we need to keep in mind. But yeah, it's quite interesting. And this is the methodology which is being now talked about a lot because of its ability to throw lights on the areas which we never have gone so deep, or we might have just commented doing some qualitative stuff earlier. but qualitative studies is still very important, even in the context of network.
Yes, true. I mean, very, very thorough and scientifically we are establishing what actually the underlying principles that are there, which define the cooperatives and, enable and empower the primary producers. So I think it's very interesting study and I'm really thankful to you. And I think, Hansa, if we don't have any questions, we can conclude.
Yeah, can I ask a question just to?
Yes, sir, please.
Yeah, I'm Subrata from Spicer.
Yeah.
Just a little curiosity about one thing that Professor Reddy has already mentioned the point that about the political barrier, and also he rightly said that Gujarat is not India. So in this context, I would like to draw your attention to the case of West Bengal. Just I have a curiosity that, well, in terms of ideology, the leftist ideology and the cooperative ideology are not too far from each other. But, hello, can you hear me?
Yes, sir, please go ahead.
Okay. But we have seen that, well, leftists ruled West Bengal for long time, a long 34 years. But we did not see the cooperative upsurge, in the state. So what do you think about it? I mean, what is where does the deficiency lie?
I think I was just referring, I think earlier that other than this study, we just published a book where we compared the social networks, particularly from the point of social norms and gender, Gujarat and West Bengal. Believe me, sir, it was against our assumption. We were thinking that the social networks are quite dense, connected in Gujarat than West Bengal, but the picture came out differently. The social networks are quite dense and connected in West Bengal than Gujarat, which means that all the material that is needed, let's not say all the material, but essential material that is needed to make any such collective action success actually is there in West Bengal. Now, the difference which I see is, I don't know if I can, I don't have time. I think I could have shown those two networks, West Bengal and Gujarat is there with me. But the difference, I think, what is between Gujarat and West Bengal is the initiation, the emergence of that need and social movement. If the social movements are driven by the political needs in the political environment, I think there is some problem here. You look at the history, all the social movements, whether it was a Dalit movement led by BSP later in UP, whether it's a peasant movement led by Chaudhary Charan Singh and then later on others in Western UP, whether it's a backward caste movement in some other states, the moment they took the shape in the idea of politics, the social causes are dropped. Because then goal becomes to secure political power and bring the social changes through political power, which, believe me, is unfinished agenda in the last 25 years in the country. We haven't seen it. In fact, the social movements lose their the nature of the changing the people at the ground. The moment they become political, they lose that character, they lose that objective, and to see the causality that you capture the political power, use the resources, bring out the programs and schemes, will change the social structure, doesn't happen. It hasn't happened as of now in our country. Problem, I think, lies there. The social movement, it has roots on the social problems and collective efforts. The efforts that are collective, that the people are brought together by ideology, it comes somewhere from the top. One has a political orientation, another has a complete social orientation. Now, I'm not trying to say that the later on in Gujarat, political parties never tried to capture this whole DCS capital. They tried. But then to start with, when this movement was being, crafted, was being implemented, at that point of time, I was saying that Kurian was too clever to really, in making sure that not much of the political halla gulla, happens around. So I see the material through which this kinds of initiative can be successful is more present in West Bengal than Gujarat. But then the problem lies in what is the basis of that social movement? Who is actually causing or putting impetus, giving impetus to the social movement? Is it top down, or it is come from the people? Is it political ideology driven, or it's actually public problem driven? So there I see there's a difference between Gujarat and West Bengal. Social capital is higher in West Bengal. It's been proven in the book. I mean, if you're interested, I can give you the link of the book. You can read. It's a very extensive study that we have done.
I think the nature of commodity is also very important, I feel. Milk being a perishable goods, and how it can be marketed, and it is produced at the household level, and how it can be marketed, and how the existing social capital can use that commodity for economic upliftment is also one of the major reasons. I don't know whether there are fruits and vegetable cooperatives functioning in West Bengal, because now it has majorly diversified into fruits and vegetables. So whether those kind of experiments are being conducted and how successful they have been. So I think the commodity itself is something which has played a role. And particularly when we all know how cooperatives actually began in Gujarat, because the role of international marketing agencies to rule out middlemen, and how it began. So I think it is very interesting area of research and thinking. If we don't have anything else, then we would like to relieve you, and I would now invite Nachiket to give a formal vote of thanks.
Hello, sir. I'm Nachiket. So I thank you for accepting our invitation to deliver a lecture on how social networks have played an important role in making cooperatives relevant over the last 75 years. And as a person who has come from Gokhale Institute of Politics and Economics, where political economy matters, this is a very interesting fact where castes versus manufacturing are two separate entities, and how the networks have remained separated out. It was a very interesting fact. When I'd gone through your working paper, I felt that this is an unexplored portion as far as our institute was concerned. And that's the reason I wanted to invite you, and thank you for accepting the invitation. I further thank my director for allowing me to take up this cause of the cooperatives as a part of the Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav, because I felt this was interesting as far as Gujarat was concerned, because this is one of the oldest cooperatives, and this is one of the most revered cooperatives as on date. Further thanks to Dr. Hansa Jain, my library team, and IRMA's communications team for ensuring that participation occurred at this small notice. With this, I would like to thank each one who has been a participant and a contributor to our modest effort for remembering the unknown and the unsung heroes of the independence and the cooperative movement. Thanks a lot once again.
Thank you, Dr. Nachiket. Thank you, Professor Mehta.
Wait a minute, Professor Alag is unmute. So Professor Alag, we are grateful from your presence. If you want to comment or remark anything for this program.
Well, Hansa, I would thank Professor Shyam Singh for an extremely lucid presentation, and also all the questionnaires. I'm very happy that he has said that he will come to the Institute. I think the kind of problems that cooperatives are facing now, and all over the country, I think the more we discuss the next generation institutions, the better off institutions like IRMA and SPI will be. I'm glad that in the Institute, those questions have been raised. I think Niti's question on what happens in other commodities and other regions is a very important one. Hansa has done a lot of survey work, and we would like to see how some of this analysis can carry it forward. Subroto's work on financing of the next stage of institutions could be very useful. Munish has done a lot of work on networking and how, based on cooperatives and so on, the newer institutions involve individual efforts and the kind of new networks that become necessary using probability analysis and so on innovations in producing a new labor supply curve and innovation. And some of the youngsters are doing extraordinarily good work. I'm glad that Nachiket has pointed out some of his interests. There is work that is going on agricultural marketing, on women. So if he comes physically, I think there is the possibility of a better institutional interaction between the Sardar Patel Institute and IRMA, which is what I'm interested in. Thank you and good luck.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. We agree wholeheartedly with your comments.
Thank you, Professor Alak, for your insightful remarks. And we will definitely call Dr. Singh for some other meeting physically. So thank you, Dr. Singh, for enriching us with your ideas. And we would like to have another interaction with you and hope that we will be able to meet you physically. So this time, I think that we will not take much time from you, and we should now stop. And I also thank to all the audience who were there with us and participated in this program. And we will have some more lectures in this series, and we will invite you and hope that you will join with us in future also. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.